Well, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us on our midweek Bible study. We are continuing in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, and picking up with verse 19. What's interesting here, and what you see on your screen, is from the uh, Jewish biblical commentary. And what's interesting is that Daniel wanted to know what was going on concerning the fourth beast. There were three before him, and Daniel doesn't seem to inquire about, well, what does the first one mean? What does the second one mean? What does the third one mean? He wants to know what the fourth one means. And of course, from that, we take away that this is the end of days. This is the last time frame, time period, reflecting the time when things will culminate. And of course, this is where all of the Bible study teachers and prophets and um, people much smarter than I am dig into this and try to dissect all of it. So again, I'm not going to be able to, add or detract or top any of that, but just kind of looking from a Hebrew standpoint, what did they see in this, which may give us a little bit of a background as we're doing this to see from learning from them and seeing how it applies to how we look at it potentially today from a different viewpoint. So Daniel rehearses this what he saw about this fourth beast. He's saying it was very diverse from all of them. Of course, exceedingly terrible. This is interesting. Why these beasts had to look terrible? Why? What were they trying to convey? We read into this that this is telling us that this is something to be fearful of. It's something that's going to, what does a beast do? It preys upon something. It devours something. It destroys something. So in Daniel's mind, this was a end of time that was very destructive. Here it talks about nails of brass he devoured, broke into pieces, stamped the residue with its feet. So let's just scroll down to the sage's comments, and here they point out something that maybe wasn't apparent to me for sure, is that there's a few details in this portion here that was not in the previous verse, in verse 7, and basically the nails of brass. So, is there significance there? We don't know for sure, but we do know that Daniel noticed it and relayed it here in this verse 19, where it wasn't spelled out in verse 7. Then he comes down to verse 20, talks about concerning the 10 horns which were on his head, and these horns seem to have some life to them, that the other horn came up and the other three fell, and there was a horn that had eyes, the horn had a mouth. Again, can't even imagine. I know there is imagery and artists' renditions on the internet that you can look up like we did before, but what can we capture um, other than what Daniel had told us? But this horn had a mouth. And what's I find interesting is what was being said here, that this mouth spoke great things. Its appearance was greater than that of its fellows. So what you're getting here is a communication. It's a way of speaking that was very grandiose, was very verbose, and was probably even way over the top. What does he mean that they spoke great things? Was it that there were great promises? We start thinking of politics. We start thinking of those who maybe have been in control of countries and leaders of countries in times past, and the rhetoric that they used to sway the people, the promises that they gave of trying to win favor. Is that what Daniel's talking about here? Yeah, I don't know. It's the only thing I can relate to. So we get to verse 20. It says that this the word horn is not really in the biblical text, but it's being implied. And then, of course, here it says that this same horn came and made war with the saints. Last week, we spent the whole session talking about talking about that and what the word saint meant. But here there's a war taking place, and it appears here that this entity, represented by the horn, was prevailing against them. Of course, this is somewhat challenging, somewhat disturbing. It's a hostile encounter. Was it that these kings were prevailing against God's people? Um, are the people being spoken about here? Is it Jerusalem? Is it the Israelite nation? Um, it's really challenging to know, but knowing how this is centered around Israel, that's what we will have to assume. And then it says in verse 22 that this entity was prevailing against them, which means people were hurt, buildings destroyed, people died during this confrontation and this prevailing that's happening. And then in verse 22, it mentions about the Ancient of Days coming. Now, I again find it very interesting why the word for God isn't being used, but it's Ancient of Days. Why did Daniel choose this description? Um, Obviously, this is God, but in what form and in what um, position that allowed him to feel that I'm not just going to call him God. I'm not going to use the terms we're familiar with of Elohim or Adonai, but he calls him the Ancient of Days. And he says judgment would come, and then it was given for the saints of the Most High to prevail against him. So again, we see God intervening. There are parallels here, what we see in the book of Revelation, when there is a battle, the Battle of Armageddon that's there. Is this a indication of that? Is this what Daniel saw, but was clarified by the revelation to John, where he clarified what Daniel was seeing? Again, we don't really know, but it's very possible. And then he's clarifying it further here in verse 23 that says that this will be a fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all other kingdoms and shall devour the whole earth and shall tread it down and break it into pieces. Some of the authorities here, biblical authorities, feel that this was the Roman Empire, which was in place when Jesus was upon the earth. And it was a very ruthless, very cruel kingdom, caused a lot of harm, a lot of damage. The temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by them. And so obviously their kingdom of the Romans was very forceful. Does it have a spiritual significance? Is there a spiritual realm that patterns this? You'll find that some uh, prophets, or uh, most of them call them prophets, but those that go through prophecy and try to explain it will sometimes apply a spiritual realm to this fourth kingdom. Are we living in it now? Is there something going on that's causing the earth to be devoured, things being tread down, things being broken in pieces? I mean, we do see that there's a lot of strange things going on in our world today. There are wars, there are pestilences, there are earthquakes, there are famines, there are floods, there are fires. All of these kind of things, many will say, fit into this um, and are signs of this fourth kingdom, this fourth beast, uh, this time leading to millennial of the end of time. So we don't know for sure. So verse 24, it says these 10 horns, out of this kingdom shall 10 kings arise. Some people will say this is similar to the European common market that's going on right now, and equate these 10 kings to 10 countries that were first uh, brought in when the European Union. Some would say, other things. So it's just very interesting. But what we do see here is that this kingdom will put down the other three kings, which is what the Roman Empire did. It took over after the Medes and Persians and Grecians. And but what's interesting here as we get in verse 25 is that who's ever in this kingdom, whatever their position is as king or ruler, they have a mouth, they have a way of communicating that are speaking very strong words. They are bringing verbiage that here it says will wear out the saints of the Most High. They will be seemingly having a lot of power that their words are going forth. And what does it mean when they speak words against? Is it words against God Himself? Are they blasphemous words? Is it someone who's saying that He is God or that He is all powerful? Or is it someone who's trying to, take over the entire world and conquer over the kingdoms that are there, conquer over the religious systems, not having any regard for the existing religious systems? But it says they will wear them out. And I find that's a really interesting word. We want to look at that one a little bit later on. And then it says that he will be so high-minded and think he has so much power that he will try to change the seasons. Um, I mean, we see some things happening now where names are being changed and holidays are being changed and things are in a turmoil and things are changing in ways. Not saying that any of these are lining here with what we're reading, but what it does do is it brings about an understanding that things are changing and things always change in a small scale before they change in a large scale. And people resist change, but sometimes when things are thrown into such turmoil and changes are made in certain ways, people become somewhat accustomed to it and maybe we even get a little numb to it. Just think of what we see of the violence that is occurring on our in our world, and we see the reporting of it, and we get numb to it because we can only take so much, we can only absorb so much to where we at first are shocked by things, and then afterwards things become, oh, that happened again, there's another one of these mass casualty occurrences, there's another tragedy, there's another fire, there's another earthquake, there's another devastation, and it wears on us. It breaks down our moral compass. It breaks down our ability to have empathy and to react in ways that maybe we didn't feel that way when it first happened. We wanted to respond, we wanted to help, we wanted to take care of it, but suddenly it becomes so overwhelming, just time after time again, that we become overwhelmed by it. So while maybe this doesn't apply to exactly what's happening today, and maybe there's worse things coming, we can see the conditioning happening and see how this will possibly, maybe we're being conditioned right now, and maybe these things that are happening are preparing us for what the Bible is talking about here. And then it says that they will be given into his hand until a time and a time and a half a time. Bible prophecy teachers will say that this is 3.5 years, a time, and the first one being one, the second one being two, and then the half being a half a year. And so there's a lot of Bible prophecy talking about a period of 3.5 years, and that's clarified in the book of Revelation in a few different instances. So we see some parallelism here. And then the judgment shall sit, and it talks about dominion being taken away. So this one who is in a wicked place and doing harmful things will be destroyed. And so again, where does this fit in? Does this fit into the book of Revelation, talking about the defeat of the Antichrist and his kingdom? And then these kingdoms and dominions will be given over to God, the Most High, and God's kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion will be everlasting, and all shall serve and obey him. Those that study the book of Revelation and could equate a time period that's spelled out in there use the term of the millennial period, which is thought to be a 1,000-year period where God is ruling and reigning on earth with his people, classified here as the saints, whoever they may be eventually, and that he will rule and reign, and everything will be a time of peace, time of safety, and it's called the millennial people, a millennial time period for his people. And so this is what Daniel saw, and he gets to verse 28 and said, this is the end of the matter. And of course, these visions to him really affrighted him. And he says his countenance was changed in him, but he kept the matter in his heart. Again, really interesting. It's almost like it was so overwhelming that he had no idea how to even share it, how to talk to people about it. There's a number of places in the Bible where people kept things in their heart. The one that goes through my mind is when the Virgin Mary was approached by the angel Gabriel and was told about her pregnancy to coming and the Messiah coming through her. The same type of phraseology is used that she kept all of these things in her heart. And it must be that, sometimes when things are just so overwhelming, when they're beyond our ability to comprehend them, about beyond our ability to even form words to share all the complexity and all the depth of what happened. Sometimes we just sit and we ponder and we store them in our heart because we as humans have very limited capability to express and to comprehend some of these things that are in a spiritual realm. So as we look here, we'll see if there's any comments by the Jewish sages. Um, Here they do talk about the time applying to a year, 2 years, and a half. So this is very similar to what those going through the book of Revelation talk about, a period of 3.5 years, although they say that this was applied to a time period that happened with Antiochus of Epiphanes, and ended with Maccabean victory. We'll see there's many parallels. There is a parallel of time that the Jewish people would equate to this, which is very valid and very real. There's also many times a parallel period that would equate in the Christian time frame. And so that could apply in the book of Revelation. And then there could be a spiritual time frame, which kind of overlaps with the book of Revelation of what's happening in this temple period. And so they talk about the epoch, the period of temple being 480 years. All of these numbers are very, very interesting, and there are people who spend a lot of time going through numbers and calculations of all of this. And so again, we can only look, we can only wonder, we can only prayerfully consider and kind of watch the times and the things that are going on. This takes us to the end of chapter 7, and this is where the language changes from Aramaic that we've been following in the past few chapters, and it goes back to Hebrew when we get to chapter 8. So I just want to go back to the Bible Hub and look if there's any of these words that some of them jumped out at us and want to just come back and take a look at this. And there was one I was just talking about that I want to come back. We talked about the Ancient of Days, but we want to look out this wearing out and see what this could really mean. Um, and so I'm looking at this and see about this and be given to his kingdom. And I think I have to look back at this word that it's not translated wearing out. Here it talks about persecuting. And so this word here is bela, which means that they will afflict. So uh, this is interesting too. What this means, he talks about it in a mental state, to afflict, to wear out. And I think that fits in very closely aligns with what we feel as we are being bombarded with media and bombarded with situations that just wear on us, that break us down, that kind of condition us and take away our desire to be concerned and to be as affected as we should be. And so this is definitely something we see in our medium today. I do know that here it talks about this word being an appeal form, which PL form is a very intense. It's not sedate, it is very intensive. And so that really resonates with me as to something that we are seeing throughout our world today. The question we all ask is, how bad is it going to get? The only thing we know is that there's a parallel that Jesus gave that says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the second coming of the Son of Man. And just to know that, we would have to go back to the book of Genesis and read in the chapter 7 and look at the parallels there. What were people like in the days of Noah? I was reading it this morning and I noticed that some things were pointed out was sexual immorality would be very, very high. There would be violence. There would be, and it uses a word in the Hebrew called robbery, that there would be a lot of taking and stealing and repossessing of things in an unlawful manner. And of course, that definitely describes our time. But how bad was it in Noah's time to where God finally said, I can't take this anymore and I can't let this go on. And it's so destructive that he had to intervene. That's the part we don't know. We just see it's happening, but how bad will it get? We can only know, we can only prepare ourselves, and we can only try to draw ourselves closer to God, saying, whatever your timing is, whatever your plan is, let me draw as close as I can. Let me be as faithful as I can so that I am ready for whenever this time frame happens. So, again, thank you so much for listening to me expound on this a little bit. If you have different ideas, please feel free to pursue them because these are only my musings and some of my learning that I've gotten from many other people. So none of this is really my own. So I pray God's blessing upon you. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to rejoining with you again next week. Bye bye.